Hi, everyone. My name is Ambriehl Turrentine, and I am the Assistant Director of Marketing and Communications with the Destiny City Film Festival. First of all, thank you to everyone watching this and joining us from wherever you are. We are very excited to have in-person and virtual events for our 9th annual edition. And of course, thank you to the lovely people on my screen from the film Anchor Point. I am very excited to have this conversation with all of you. So I'm going to just go ahead and let you all introduce yourself, but let's start with Holly to say your name, role, and maybe any other starting words you'd like to say.
Okay. First off, my name is Holly Tuckett. I'm the director of Anchor Point. I would love to thank the Destiny Film Festival for programming our film. I think that it is a perfect film for the area in which we are screening. I know that there are many female firefighters in wildland firefighting up in your area, and I'm excited for them to be able to possibly see the film for themselves.
Lacey, you want to go next?
Sure. My name is Lacey England. I use she, her pronouns. I was one of the main characters in Anchor Point. Was there a third part of that introduction that I'm missing?
Not really.
Okay. We'll get back to it.
Yes, great. Jennifer?
Hi, I'm Jennifer Dobner. I am the co-writer, producer, chief cook and bottle washer, and emotional support animal for Ambriehl.
Maddie?
I am not an emotional support animal. My name is Maddie. I'm an emotional support wannabe animal, kind of sometimes, I'm like, I get it. Animals are much better than humans. I was the editor for Anchor Point and also use she, her pronouns. Go.
Linya?
Yeah, good evening, everyone. My name is Lania, and I'm with the University of California Cooperative Extension out in the north coast of California. And I'm the lead organizer for the Women in Fire Training Exchange that's featured in Anchor Point. Super lucky to work with all these awesome people.
And Eric.
I am Eric Marks. I'm the supervising sound editor of Anchor Point. Just honored to be here with you all and really love this team. They are family. Holly, you're the dream collaborator, and we're so happy to be here with you.
The love.
And thank you again, all of you, for joining. I really do appreciate it. So I'm just going to start with a kind of general question. What was the genesis of this project, and how did each of you get involved?
So the project came to me through a student of mine, and we actually started working with a firefighter out of Boise, Idaho. And she kind of turned out to out herself, kind of blew the whistle too soon for us to be able to really engage with her and her workplace. And so when she did that, we said, okay, where do we go from here? We really want to follow this story that you've introduced to us about women in wildland fire and the challenges that they face working in a very male-dominated career and profession, and some of the things that they are up against, not just fighting fire, but also the misogyny, the harassment, the disrespect oftentimes. And so she introduced us to a woman who said, you have to go to this Women in Fire and Prescribed Fire Training Exchange. This is where you're going to find your story. This is where you're going to figure out how to do this and be able to be on live fire. And that's when we met Lenya first off, and then she had us get interviewed by Lacey. And they were not exactly like jazzed about having a documentary crew come and point cameras at them. They had some bad experiences in past WTREX trainings where they were misrepresented by journalists and things like that. So we had a big hill to climb in convincing them that we were there to tell their story and that we wanted to make it a positive, uplifting look at these professions. So that's kind of where the story started.
And then Lacey and Lania, how, whenever you were approached with this, just kind of speak from your point of view, what were your initial thoughts and what kind of appealed to you to actually participate in this story?
Well, Holly's right. We were hesitant because of our past experiences that were, turned out to not be what we were hoping they would be. I was part of the incident command team for the WTREX that year, and I was acting as the public information officer. So it was part of my role was to do the media contact stuff, if the local news organization where we were wanted to do a story, or, that I was putting out the press briefings and stuff like that. And so clearly a documentary team would fall under that purview. And my role initially, after a few, I had a phone call, tried to suss out what the deal was, if there were any ulterior motives happening, and I don't know, I probably didn't come across as super friendly that first phone call, but we broke the ice. We got a little better relationship happening. And then my role was really just going to be their handler, really, while they were on site with us at the WTREX. It was my responsibility to, make sure that they were being safe, that they were getting the footage they wanted and talking to people and, getting to see fire, but also making sure they were in the right spot and not where they shouldn't be, and doing all that sort of stuff. And was not originally planning on being involved in any way beyond that. But then we spent several hours a day together for a week, and Holly was like, "Hey, we're going to talk to you some more. Come over here." And then afterwards she was like, basically, we're just going to use you to kind of tell the whole story and use you as the voice to help other people tell their stories that they didn't want to tell on film. And I was like, that wasn't the point. I wasn't supposed to be in it. I was just supposed to be walking you around. So they weaseled their way in. They weaseled me in without me realizing it, but it all turned out okay.
And then I also do want to ask about Kelly. I know, Lacey, you said you were very hesitant. How did Kelly react to being approached and wanting her story to be told?
Well, Lacey's, when we first arrived, I said, is there any way that we can get time with Kelly while we're here? Because I had done research to know that Kelly had spoken to Congress about issues happening within the National Park Service and kind of representing the women's voices, in Congress at a hearing in 2016. And it got to the heart of the matter. And so I thought if I could get her to be a part of the documentary, that would be really awesome. And first thing out of Lacey's mouth was, she's not taking any interviews.
She wasn't
not
into
at
it.
all.
She was, don't plan on that.
Yes, don't plan on it. And I was like, can we at least film her while she's working on the line and maybe talk to her about the work she's doing? And that somehow flew a little bit. And I think that, once she realized that I wasn't going to ask her questions right then and there that were about, her testimony and what led to her testimony, she kind of opened up to me a little bit, but it was very much, I'm here to do a job. I'm not interested in giving you anything more than that. And you can see it in my testimony. That's all you need. And so I knew that I wanted her to be the other main character, because the way I saw it was there was two generations of the similar personalities, and their approach to how they handle the environment of working in wildland fire were generationally different, and yet they both had the same love of being out in the wilderness and doing their job. And, it was just this generational different look at the job. And they kind of mirrored each other's personalities in a lot of ways. And then not at all in other ways. And so I really knew that I wanted the both of them to kind of be the main threads in the film. And so I had my work cut out to win Kelly over. It took attending a night of cocktails and no cameras, and while I was at W-Trex, and then when we left W-Trex, many phone calls, and spending time getting to know her, telling her about what my vision was, how I saw her fitting into the narrative. And there just was a day where she was like, "Hey, I think you should come up and visit me at Yosemite and bring your camera." And I was like, "Holy shit, this just happened. Wow." She actually is like, might do this. And so we ended up, going. And I think that being with her during that first trip to Yosemite and really kind of spending time with her, letting her know what we were interested in was more her story, like who she is as a person, than talking about all of the bad stuff. I think that's when she kind of opened up more and let us in and agreed to move forward.
And you kind of touched on this, but I wanted to ask you, so of course, Lacey and Kelly are extremely vulnerable in this film, but as a documentarian, you have to be vulnerable in order to build rapport with these subjects. So I was curious, what were some of the ways, I mean, you mentioned cocktails, but how else did you just develop this rapport with both of them and everyone involved with the film?
Well, for starters, I dropped my pants. We were
not metaphorically.
Not metaphorically.
No, yeah. No.
Yeah. We were attending W-Trex, and the first day that we got there after being on a red-eye flight, had to present to the group. And I am very much a shoot from my hip kind of presenter person. And, when the crowd is not into what you are saying, they are not picking up what you're putting down. And I kind of said, "This is why I'm here. This is what I'm going to be doing. Are there any questions?" And somebody yelled out, "Did you bring your cotton panties?" Because one of the rules of being on a fire and being a part of the training was that we had to come fire ready, which meant fire boots and cotton undergarments. And so I happened to be wearing my cotton panties, which I don't usually wear cotton panties. And I said, "Yes." And I dropped my pants and I said, "And I'm going to have swiss and swass with all the rest of you." And they started laughing. And that actually is, I think, when Kelly was like, because she walked up to me and she said, "You're going to fit in just fine. And we're excited that you're here." So I think, that vulnerability is something as a filmmaker, you really, I mean, if you're asking people to be vulnerable with you, you have to be willing to be vulnerable with them. And, it was a way for me to, really be vulnerable and be like, "Yeah, I did bring my cotton underwear." So those are, I think too, just, spending time, getting to know both Kelly and Lacey. I consider them friends now. We have friendships, and, some filmmakers would be like, no, you shouldn't can be friends with your subjects. That's not how I operate. So I ended up, I think giving of myself. They saw that I was giving as much as they were giving to their work. I was giving to my work while I was there for those 2 weeks with them in the beginning. And that helped.
Well, and I would say, Holly, that we all noticed that you came to the W-Trex without an agenda. And, we deal with a lot of media. This is a hot topic. Like, people want to be part of this. And as you said, like, we had dealt with some exploitative media in the past that just wanted like the dirty stories of all the bad things that have happened to people. And so we're very guarded. And when we had actually several documentary filmmakers approach us that year. And the thing that really struck us about Holly and her partner who was there with her were that they didn't come with an agenda. They didn't have a storyline. They didn't want like the hot clips that supported the story they were trying to tell. They were like, we don't know what our story is. We just want to understand what you all are doing. And I think that really meant a lot to us, and we could trust it from the start. And that's not usually the case.
Thanks.
I would just say this is the second film that Holly and I have done together, and that she, I hope like me, who was a journalist for 25 years, like, we don't like to approach things with a predetermined ending, right? Or any kind of story, but we're both really committed to finding the story in what we experience and what we see and the people we meet. Also, Holly is, and I mean this with all love and respect, relentless in terms of, taking the film where she wants it to go when she's sort of found the groove that we're gonna, or the storyline that we're gonna follow. I mean, many things have happened around this film that, 3 ladies and a bottle of whiskey in the basement, might not have been able to do with about 2 pennies to rub together, but we were able to do it in part because she's really, perseverance is sort of her middle name.
And Holly, I'm glad you mentioned that story about the dropping your pants, because one, I just didn't really think much about that, about what you actually had to wear while you were out in the field. But one thing I did think about was just the access and how great it was, how up close you often were. I mean, I know there was usage of body cams, but I'm kind of curious just about the access and how you filmed in some of those seemingly pretty dangerous areas.
Well, most of everything that I filmed on fire was at W-Trex. So I was very, very much well taken care of. And,
I had to pull you back a couple of times.
Yeah.
You were like, oh, fire.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that is true. As a camera person, you sometimes you disappear into your camera, and you become engrossed by what you're seeing and not sometimes aware of what's happening around you at times. And I had said to Lacey, that will be a problem here probably. In the beginning, I was like very tentative, but it took, I don't know, half of a day. And then I was like, ooh.
You're like, how close can I get? And I was like, you probably get that close.
Probably if you're singeing your hair, you shouldn't get that close. But but yeah, so all of that footage, we purposefully knew that we had tried to go the routes of getting permissions from the Forest Service, permissions from the BLM, and it was literally going to be a 2-year process to, we would have to have a storyline, we would have to have, and they wanted to control the narrative
and approve it.
And I didn't want that to be how I made a film. And it wouldn't help the situation because it would get buried. And so, it would not allow for the film to bring light to this unknown to a lot of people. It's unknown that women are even out there on the fire.
I think it also would have sort of like qualified everyone's response to us in that, people have jobs and they work for organizations. And if they're trying to move the ball in some way, I think it happens to all of us in our jobs. We can get caught up in trying to be too careful about what we want to say about our organization to the point that it can restrain like maybe what our real feelings are or what we actually would want to say and the way we would want to say it. And so I think it was like the right thing to do personally, to like go around those roadblocks so that people could be authentic and just themselves in talking about, the issue at hand.
Yeah. So to get around the issue of now I want to film some stuff out in the field, we did ask Lacey's crew boss for permission. And he basically was like, yeah, let me check. And then it was the same thing. You have to go through these channels. And it would have been, I had made a phone call and waited, and it would have been a month and still nobody had contacted me back. And so Lacey was like, I'm getting ready to start my season. What do you think we should do? And I said, I don't know. I'm totally stymied here. And then she was like, well, firefighters all have GoPros, a lot of them. She's like, why don't you just throw me some GoPros and I'll film myself. And so, some of the, anything that involves Lacey out in the field, she filmed that. And she did a damn good job.
She did.
She really did.
Certainly improved towards, as the season progressed. I warned them. I was like, listen, I'm not a camera person. I'm not a cinematographer. I was like, I don't even take selfies on my phone. So we'll see how this goes. But we ended up getting we got some good stuff.
Great stuff.
I got a quick lesson from a film student at our university in Bozeman. I just reached out to a mutual contact through a friend, and I was like, hey, you don't know me, but film, and I need to get a whole bunch of GoPro footage this season, but I have no idea what I'm doing. I was like, will you go on a hike with me and just teach me how to use this camera? So I got like a 2-hour tutorial from a film student, and then it was all learn on the job.
Yep.
Well, I totally agree. You did a wonderful job. I was really impressed by a lot of that footage. And like Holly said, a lot of the visuals in the film are very engrossing. And that kind of leads me to my next question. I do want to pose a question to Eric. How did you approach the sonic language of the film?
Yeah, it's a great question. First and foremost, it was just conversations with Holly, and talking about, what is the overall approach, the intent here? How do we, sort of tell these authentic stories through sound and build out all the Foley, the ambiences, the environments, help like engross the audiences in these places and not really judge the subjects or any of the experiences that we're in the middle of. There were certainly challenges. GoPros are, they don't have the best microphones attached to them, but so there were, challenges with like cleaning up dialogue, things like that. And, of course, building out entire like Foley and ambiences around what's happening so that, if you see a fire that looks pretty close, but it's not well recorded, we had to replace and build all that stuff from scratch, like find the right fire sounds that, I've never been to these places or been that close to real fires in out there, but Holly could, talk me through what sounded right. And there were a couple of field recordings, I think, Holly, that you provided, right, from your sound person.
Yeah.
So those provided really good reference, and then we just kind of built, layer upon layer of fire and distance. And there were a couple of really fun sequences too, like helicopters and grappling hooks and climbing down trees. That stuff is a sound designer's dream, and just try to approach it with a really a sense of naturalism and just everything feeling as tactile and real as possible.
And he did a great
And
job.
Did you say you had worked with Holly before, or was this your first collaboration?
No, this was my first collaboration with Holly. And, I mean, Holly is just the best leader imaginable. I mean, she builds trust and creates an environment of trust so quickly, and really just kind of let us, try lots of things. And it was just an absolute joy working with Holly, and this team just very quickly became a family. So it was just wonderful on every level.
Yeah. My whole comment to Eric when he started was, you're the expert. I know what I kind of want to hear. I just fulfill my wishes, and however you do that, make your magic. And he and his team just really knocked it out of the park. Like, there are scenes in there that Maddie will attest to this, that we were like, oh, the visuals are awesome, but holy shit, the sound is awful. What are we gonna do?
I actually remember saying the phrase "good luck."
Yeah,
a lot. So you did great.
It blew my mind when I saw the final product after like all of the sound had been done and everything. Because I knew that 90% of the GoPro footage I gave Holly just had overwhelming helicopter whop 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 noises. Like, you couldn't hear anything. It was just like drowned out with the rotors. And I was like, I don't know what they're gonna do with any of this, but like, it looks cool. And then I saw the final product, and like Eric was saying, with the, like inside the helicopter and the noises of the carabiners when like rappelling, and then in the tree, I didn't even realize it until I had watched the entire scene. And I was like, that was so like like, why was that such a good scene? And Holly was like, because you could hear what was happening. And I was like, oh yeah, because I usually just heard like and like my noise canceling helmet, I was like, it's just like helicopter noises and nothing else. I was like, oh, how did they do that? That's amazing. It changed the whole feel of everything. And I had, not being a film person, I was like, no idea how that happened in real life. But really like changed the whole feel. I thought it blew my mind as a layperson.
It's amazing to hear. I mean, knowing that you're out there every day, Lacey, and like know what those things sound like, even that it didn't bump for you means the world to me. Like we spent a lot of time obviously building that stuff out, and Holly, you just gave us free reign and trust to just go to town and create. And yeah, it was a lot of fun. And I'm also really glad, with documentaries in particular, that Holly, you never pushed for ADR. There was never a time where you said, let's get the subjects back in and re-record a line of dialogue. It was, let's work with what we have. Let's, clean something to the best of our ability and build around it and just create natural, soundscapes to make things just feel real without anything really artificial from the people in it.
Yeah. That was something that I don't know. I don't even like to doctor people's sentences. We had to do it a couple of times, but the essence of what they were saying was still there. It just was like, how can we get to the point quicker? And cutting through some of the fat in what was being said. But yeah, I don't ever give. The only thing that was scripted was the opening helicopter dialogue that Lacey did, but guess who wrote it? Lacey did. So, it really is Lacey and Kelly and all the women that are in the film. It's their essence. It's not anything that a lot of documentarians will write a script and expect them to kind of spew things out, or you'll ask questions. I've worked for a lot of documentarians as a cinematographer who ask questions in such a way that they're feeding them what they want them to say. I don't like to do that. I really, really wanted this to be a very much cinema verite, experiential film where people can go and be in the theater and understand what this world of wildland fire is like for women and really feel it.
And I like that we're on the topic of making this film as natural and authentic as possible, because I really felt that in the film and in the storytelling, just this connection to natural environment, especially when I think Kelly's one who mentions that she had lived in a teepee and had been very familiar with indigenous views on land and nature and fire and warmth and comfort. And it was just a really interesting outlook. So I'm curious, and this question is open to anyone. What were some of the things that you learned during the filming and during the production, or what was something that maybe challenged you while working on this film in relation to just your views on nature and your job, or if that makes sense?
I have all kinds of opinions, so I could talk all day about that, but I want Maddie, our editor, to chime in here somewhere. You know, I feel like, because you saw more of this film than any of us. Because
I was just gonna say, something I learned, it wasn't included in the film, was something that, something interesting is that the animals and nature and wildlife apparently are on board with like healthy fire. And there was a bit that wasn't included, but of somebody talking about a deer that they had saw right after a fire, and the deer went and rolled in the ashes to get all the ticks off. I was like, that's pretty rad. When I think about what we've learned from the film, it's a lot of things like that. A lot of, and I actually, Lenya, you mentioned the word exploitative. This was totally an exploitative film. Not in the way that we wanted to push an agenda, but it was kind of therapeutic exploitation, and a learning exploitation, using your stories to kind of learn more about ourselves. And I don't know, that's something that I learned a lot. It is learning that there are cool people in every industry, not just in filmmaking, but in firefighting, who are doing work to make things more equitable and more better. So that was something that I'm taking away from, at least, that I've learned from this film. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do.
Jennifer, did you want to say something? Looks like you're thinking.
I'm thinking like it shouldn't be that hard of a question to answer. but somehow it is. I think that just in general, the film is a learning experience about women in the workplace. And although it's specific to fire, like that's sort of a universal challenge for women and always has been, right? Many of us have been in situations where we're not at the decision-making table. We don't have the voice we probably deserve. And I think really opens the door to seeing another space for women where change is really needed. And I have this thing I always say about the metaphor of W-Trex and what they're trying to do. And for some reason, I can't think of it tonight. But I think what they're doing is really important. They're bringing women together, empowering women to be able to not only just use their skills, but use their voices. And that's really important for them to do. And if I can ask Lenya a question, I'm just wondering if you see that Anchor Point is having an impact among women in fire in any way. I mean, I know it's been shared around a lot between women in fire. And are you feeling like we're making a difference?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest impact is not necessarily on the women in fire, but on all the people that surround us, right? So helping with the awareness of the issues and of the feelings. I mean, being able to understand Lacey's story and Kelly's story in this really human way that, people can watch that movie and not feel attacked or defensive. Like they're able to, it's personal and it's understandable and it's very human. And I think it's really helped with just telling the story and making it accessible to folks. So I know Holly's doing all this great work with the Forest Service and, just really trying to make these stories available so that people, when they hear, a lot of people, when they hear the words harassment or, things like that, it's immediately puts them on the defensive. And I think Anchor Point does just such a nice job really helping us understand what that looks like. And that sometimes it's just really subtle, and we're all buying into it. We don't even realize that it's not egregious all the time. It's like these subtle micro things that are happening that we can all work on. So I think the awareness piece is so huge.
And going off of that, where do you think, or maybe where do you hope the story will continue to go from here?
Just so you all know, we have secured an educational license with the U.S. Forest Service, and they'll be using it for the next year as a discussion starter, basically to talk about things like, harassment. I mean, there's been a lot of discussion between myself and them developing kind of like not curriculum, but like a discussion guide, so that it doesn't put people on the defensive. And so we're really working hard to give them not just the film, but a tool to go with the film to be able to have productive discussions. We've already done a screening with like a lot of like supervisory level Forest Service folks, and it was really well received. And I think that, the guy who's the head of wildland fire for the Forest Service is behind it 100%. He was like, this film's really important, and we want to make changes in our culture. So I think that, those kinds of things are happening. The Park Service, which is Parks Canada, also is looking to secure an educational license from us. And so we're really just trying to do those kinds of things right now. We are in the midst of trying to secure distribution. So it will end up out to the general public. But to me, these educational opportunities and networking with organizations that want to change the dialogue and change the culture of their workplace, and that doesn't just mean wildland fire. It's across all spectrums of workplaces, where I think we just need to do a lot better about being inclusive and making things equitable. And I think the film gives us a platform to start those discussions and have meaningful conversations around it.
I think one of the really important things that Lacey says in the movie is around language and how we talk about things and what people hear on the receiving end of what we say, because I think that's a huge part of it. We don't really know how to talk about it. And we don't always have the skills to even look at ourselves and figure out where we've made a misstep that inadvertently hurt someone else. So I'm hoping that we are contributing to that sort of change of direction.
Right. And I always like to end on this question. It's a very broad question. So of course we have a limited amount of time and a good amount of people. So anyone can answer this, but my last question is there anything about the film that I didn't ask about that you'd like to share? This can be an anecdote, anything, any parting words you want to share with anyone watching this, literally anything.
Did you have a favorite part?
I was going to say, I was like, back to you.
Back to you. Let's ask you. I have so many favorite moments. I don't even know where to start.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of mine too, but no, go ahead. I'll keep thinking of mine while you talk.
I think for me, it's both Lacey and Kelly have this grit and perseverance that, really, to me, stands out and kind of gives people I just need to find that thing that anchors me to keep me going, right, when times get tough. And also it's okay for me to say enough is enough. It doesn't make me less of a person. It doesn't take away from anything that I've done in where I've started my career. Doesn't necessarily mean that I need to end my career there, and knowing when to have the courage to say enough is enough, and that you're going to be okay, that you can move through that. And so I think that for me is kind of like the overarching message. You know, you're always going to have those people like Kelly that just have so much grit and perseverance, and that they'll put up with all the bullshit. But sometimes it's okay to say, I'm not putting up with any more bullshit.
Well, and I think it's really cool in the film to see Lacey and Kelly, who are both these incredible leaders, leading in different ways and bringing their femininity to leadership. And, you know, I always love that Kelly wears like big earrings out on the fire line, and she's got this long hair that's down below her butt, and she's this like badass fire leader. And the fact that Lacey left fire, and yet she's still one of our core people with the W Treks, and she will continue to be. And so she's still engaged in fire, and she's still a leader, but she's doing other stuff too. And so, you know, I think it can look different ways, and we all have different paths, and we can still have influence. And so you can be yourself, and you can pursue what you love, and you can still have influence. And I think I love that, because I think Lacey and Kelly are just both such incredible leaders in this field.
So the Peanut Gallery at my house is saying to talk about the moment in the film at Kelly's going away party where people are down by the river, and the moon is this amazing glowing orb that people may not realize, but Holly shot just with moonlight, not with any help. And sort of the coming and the going of that, if that makes sense. Kelly's moving out, but at one moment, and Lacey's thinking about what to do next. But at one moment, Kelly says to these young women, you'll have your time, you'll have your moment, and you'll step into it. And I think that that's part of the story that we tell, that Kelly's generation had their time and they tackled some of these issues in one way. Lacey's generation has a different take on what to do, but we keep evolving. The conversation keeps evolving, and each new generation brings something new. Just like the moon goes down and the sun comes up, you know, every day we get a chance to be better and different than we were before.
I really like that point that, I mean, when this project started and Holly was trying to get me on board, you know, one of my first thoughts was like, I don't want it to be about me. This isn't about my story. This isn't about my fire experience. Like this is a whole thing. This is about all the people. And Holly was like, yeah, but we're making a movie, and movies need characters. And I was like, yeah. You know, so, but I never wanted it to be like, this is Lacey's fire experience. This is a story about Lacey. But I was hoping that me being comfortable sharing on camera could be a conduit for other people's stories to be told, people who weren't comfortable sharing those things on camera, and that the experiences I shared could be a conduit for more experiences being shared and more stories being told and more conversations starting to happen, which I think is what we've experienced so far in like group discussions that we've had after screenings, is that, you know, here are two main characters on the screen and we're talking specifics about my story and Kelly's story, but the end result is so much more. You know, people immediately start picking pieces and relating to that, and oh, this is how my experience weaves in, and that makes me so happy, because that's the point. It's the whole web of everything that's going on, and it's not just a movie about Lacey and Kelly fighting fire. So that's really what I am enjoying seeing coming out of this, is that it's creating a much bigger web than a single documentary.
Yeah, I would just add, I mean, I think to Lacey's point, like it is doing exactly that. Like this film is really important and is universal in a strange way. Like just being vulnerable and courageous and strong, I think has illuminated a lot of things in this film that are important for people in any industry. And just, I think can show anyone how the importance of just thinking before you speak and how you treat others, and you know, how you go into any interaction with people. And you know, I learned a lot about that, as well as just the fire industry as a whole that I really knew nothing about. So I think that this should be necessary viewing in any workplace.
And that's why we like you.
That right there.
That and the whole thing with the hummingbird wings that I just love so much.
And Maddie, I don't want to put you on the spot, but did you have anything you want to end with?
That's enough. Maddie, did you learn anything else, or did you not learn anything? No, I get it. I'll speak up. I was going to say, Lacey, I don't think I've ever told you, you know, like you saying that. I'm like, oh, I should tell you how much it meant to have someone who I could identify with. You know, like you're a couple years older than me, but we're in the same, you know, generation. And it was really cool to see a woman, you know, kind of be bro-y. You know what I mean? Like, and I was kind of like, oh, like, I think if I was a firefighter, I would be like Lacey. And it was really cool to kind of see you, like you as a character, also be willing to be vulnerable, even though you were kind of bro-y, right? Like to be, and to say all the dirty shit, and, you know, and to say it with so much education. You know, you had done the reading of the things and the racism and all the things. And this movie, when Holly and I were talking about kind of the story and before cutting anything, the generational thing was really a big point. You know, at the very last scene, or when Kelly and Lacey are talking over the campfire together at nighttime, and their personalities in that scene are just so different. I love that scene so much. And, you know, they're talking about this thing and you can kind of tell that they're in different generations, you know, like, and Lacey's got the, you know, the sweatshirt with the thing on it. And there's so much to be learned there, you know, like it's kind of a call to action, not just for our generation, but for all of us to be like, okay, wait, you know, let's listen to each other and let's learn from what we've learned in our different lives and industries and generations. And anyway, that's all just to say, like, I appreciate you saying what you did. Like, and I'm sorry that I haven't said thank you before, but there's a lot to learn from your story and the combination and the third story, right? 1 + 1 = 3 of you and Kelly. I really appreciate that.
That's great. And thank you, all of you, Holly, Lacey, Jennifer, Maddie, Lenya, Eric. Thank you so much for joining us. And thank you for sharing your stories. And thank you for sharing the film with us. We're very excited to present it to our audiences. So again, people watching this, tell your friends about Anchor Point and have some good conversations about this, because there are plenty of conversations to be had. Again, thank you so much. And I really enjoyed the conversation. It was great meeting you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks. And